So I'm working on my boat, and I just got done doing two upgrades to the stereo system that I've been wanting to do, and I just haven't got to them yet. So this is a 2018 Moomba, and this boat came stock with the Fusion ms-ra205 head unit. And so the first upgrade is getting the radio to not turn on and off each time that you move the ignition switch from accessory to off to run, back to off to accessory, not have the radio turn on and off each time you're doing that. And so what you need to do is you need to tie the 12 volt trigger switch wire, or the whatever you want to call it, the trigger input to the head unit. Tie that 12 volt source into this open accessory switch right here. And then each time that you cycle the boat, the ignition switch, it won't shut the battery off. So to do that, from the back side of the stock head unit, there's going to be two wires leaving, and they're labeled 12 volt switched and 12 volt constant. Those two wires are going to be red and yellow. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, this is horrible. Red and yellow, and they were in this stock connector right here, and they were into that slot. The red and the yellow wires are going to be joined together in one pin, into one pin terminal, or one pin that goes into one terminal. So you need to separate the red and the yellow. So pull that pin out, separate the wires, and then the red wire is your trigger, 12 volt trigger switch signal. So if you go to the accessory switch, right, go to the back of the accessory switch, find the switched on hot wire, hot leg wire, whatever you want to call it, and you need to find that. And mine was tucked up in here in some zip ties, and it was labeled right here as accessory, and this is a orange and brown striped wire. So orange with a brown stripe. That wire, test it with a voltmeter and make sure that's the same one on your boat, but every time you turn the accessory switch from on to off, on you should see 12 volts, off you should see nothing, blah. That wire needs to be tied into the red wire from the back of your head unit, again, which is the switched wire. And then, like I said, if you go back to the stock connector, there was a red and yellow wire that were joined together. Now you have taken care of the red wire to the accessory switch, and you need to take the yellow wire and you need to splice on, I don't even know, I think the yellow wire, I think it's this one right here. You need to take that yellow wire that you removed from the connector and you separated from the red wire, and you need to splice on additional length, and you need to route that to your amp bus bar 12 volt source. The reason why you can't leave the yellow wire in the stock connector is the 12 volt source is not, it's still tied into the ignition switch, and the electrical magic that's happening, it's just not a consistent or a constant enough 12 volt source for the radio input. So that, if you do that, that will solve the issue of the radio turning on and off. So to summarize, back of the head unit, follow red and yellow, and at least in this boat with this head unit, into the stock connector, pull the connector out, separate yellow and red. Red wire runs to your ACC switch, and the yellow wire needs to be routed to your amp bus bar 12 volt bus bar source. So yeah, that will fix that's the first upgrade. The second upgrade is more complicated, and let's see if I can explain that. So I'll just show the first upgrade before I move on to the second one, actually. So there you go, the battery switch is on, the key is off, and if you just flip this accessory switch on now, the head unit will turn on. And it doesn't matter now if you move the ignition switch to off, accessory, run, the radio, the head unit will remain on. So yeah, and then when you want to just turn it off, you just flip the ACC switch off and radio shuts off. So in terms of the second upgrade, it has to do with the ability for zone control, volume zone control from the head unit. So this Fusion MS, what is it, dash ms-ra205. This head unit has the ability to control 2 zones, but the way that this is wired right now, everything is tied into zone 1. So the tower speakers, the cabin speakers, when you have no independent control of those 2 zones. I don't know if the Rockford Fosgate sub and tower speakers and the lower amp there was like an upgraded factory upgrade package or someone else did it. But regardless, the way that it's wired right now, like I said, you have no ability to control either zone. And so that means that when someone is behind the boat surfing or wakeboarding or doing whatever, the people inside the boat are just being blasted by the music, and it's so loud in here so that the person behind the boat can enjoy the music. It's horrible. It shouldn't. So that the upgrade fixes that, right? So I'm gonna do my best to try to explain this because it's just like reading the forums. I'm not an audio guy. I'm not a stereo guy. So it was hard for me to understand exactly what to do. So this head unit comes with 1 pair of line out RCA cables, but they're only for zone 1. So the way that the system was wired was that the zone 1 line out RCA cables went into the kicker amp, and then they had RCA Y cables that were then bridged over to the Rockford Fosgate amp. And then obviously the Rockford Fosgate amp is what is powering or supplying output to the tower speakers. So that's how they accomplished it. But again, everything's tied into zone 1. So you would think it's like, okay, well, if the Fusion amp has the ability, or Fusion head unit has the ability to control 2 zones, just run another set of RCA cables. But this head unit doesn't come with a set of RCA cables for zone 2. It doesn't have a line out zone 2 RCA cable pair. What it does have is it has 2 pairs, 4 wires, speaker wires for zone 2. So what you have to do is you have to take those wires and use a line out converter and convert the speaker wires to RCA cables, route those from under the dash over to your second amp, and plug those into the second amp, and then disconnect the bridge from the first amp to the second amp. So now you have line out zone 1 RCA to the kicker amp and line out zone 2 RCAs to the Rockford Fosgate amp, but it's ran through an LOC. So, oh man, so what I think ends up happening is that the reason why this Fusion head unit it could work is because I think the stock stereo wasn't even an amplified system. So you just had speaker wires leaving the head unit, and they were going to, the cabin speakers and the bow, or maybe just the cabin speakers, and that's how you could control the zones. Well, when you're using an amplified system, obviously, that's not going to work. So what you need to do is, like I said, go up here and you need to find the pair of wires, the stock stereo wires that are for zone 2, and you need to convert those to RCA cables. So in this boat, the zone 2 speaker wires were solid purple with a black stripe, and then it was solid green and green with a black stripe. So take those wires, because this system was amplified, was always using amplifiers, all of the speaker wires were just bundled up here, but you only care about zone 2 because zone 1 is already controlled by the RCA cables, the stock RCA cables for zone 1. So all you care about is the zone 2 speaker wires, the 4 wires. Splice those into the line out converter or the LOC, and take those RCAs now and route them. Just follow the stock routing. follow the other RCA cables. So it routes, behind the sub, into the bow, under the seats, around the front of the bow, and then it heads over here towards, where all your amps and everything are located. So you can see, just the stock wiring loom or wiring protector. Just run your new RCAs, follow that, put it in the loom, and then you can just run it back here, and then it just looks clean, like no one ever touched it. But now that you have those RCAs running from the Zone 2 speaker wires, and they're converted to RCAs and they're ran to the amp, now you'll have full control over Zone 1 and Zone 2. So what I did is Zone 1 on the head unit is now the cabin, and Zone 2 is the tower speakers. Because of the limitations of the stock head unit, or at least this head unit, there's no ability to control a standalone zone for the sub. Now you could rip this head unit out and upgrade it, but that's the ones that I were looking at that would fit this existing cutout are $500. So that was not an option for me. But you could also run a equalizer or bass control knob from the amp that's controlling the sub, and you could run that over under the dash and then have the ability to control the sub volume that way. That's a whole nother upgrade, and I didn't feel like I wanted that control. It wasn't worth it for me, at least not right now. But yeah, so hopefully I can, here, let me show you how this works now. All right, let's see how it works. So again, first upgrade, flip that on, radio will turn on. And then I'm controlling both zones right now. I've labeled them as cabin and tower. But if I wanted to, if let's say someone was surfing, right, I would keep the cabin the same and then I'd crank the tower. Or if we were just hanging out on the boat, because the tower is so loud, I could just turn the tower, all the way down, or down substantially more than the cabin, and then I could control it like that. So I know I did a horrible job explaining that, and I'm sure my terminology or a lot of it's wrong, but you get the idea, and I hope that this helps or can help someone else, because when you're reading the forums, and especially if you're not educated like me, you just don't really understand what you need to do. But this will fix it. So those two upgrades are totally worth it in my mind, and it cost me like $45 to do the whole thing. And this boat, of course, it has the the hardwired remote on the rear, on the transom of the boat. So that all those functionality, or the function of that, now remains the same, other than the added benefit of, if you're on the back of the boat and you use that remote, you can control Zone 2. And so you can choose your song, and you can crank Zone 2 tower speakers up before you hop in the water. If you're changing, you want to change a song or whatever, if you're swimming, you can do that without having to crawl in the boat. And you will only be able to, or you'll be able to control the actual tower speakers itself, instead of just blasting everyone inside of the boat. So yeah, flame me in the comments.